Welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I am your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hey, I'm Amanda.
Hello there. We are your source for messy, imperfect homeschool advice and community. We come to you straight from the trenches of homeschooling, and we are motivated by things like helping you get started, working through periods of doubt, finding the right curriculum fit, transitioning to the next phase of your journey, whether that's middle school, high school, dual enrollment, whatever. We are not motivated by affiliate links and payouts from Meta, because that's the issue with the advice most homeschooling influencers are doling out online.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, social media is such a double-edged sword. I have definitely bought things because I was swayed by social media influencers or just ads on Meta that were like a total bust. In fact, when something is actually awesome, I'm genuinely pleasantly surprised. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not what you expect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually really like this. This is fantastic. So anyway, so many social media influencers and personalities, they only show the sunshine and rainbows, highlight reel. And look, sometimes it's nice to look at that. I won't lie. Sometimes I want to see something nice and happy and forget that the world is on fire around us. But there are a lot of times that it just makes us feel lacking, you know? So we will not be doing that here. We'll do our best to give you just the full picture, right? The highs and the lows without it being a negative bitch fest. Though you can definitely expect a rant or two, a few soapboxes, a side quest here and there. The truth is, we both genuinely love homeschooling and we love doing life with our respective kiddos. But just like anything else, homeschooling is a roller coaster of good days and not so good days. And we'd rather tell you the truth about all of that than have you walk away thinking that it's just you and you've made the wrong choice or that you just suck at this, because it's probably not the case.
No, it's not the case. It's definitely not just you. Some days are hard. We all have them. True story. Absolutely. The other thing that you can expect in this space is conversation that is secular and progressive in nature. You'll never hear us say things like, homeschooling isn't a privilege, it's a sacrifice. Like, hello, two things can be true at one time, and tell me that you don't understand privilege. Because we are absolutely privileged to homeschool. There are so many people who wish they could and just can't get the logistics to fall into place.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, we are pretty loud about our values so that we can find our people. So if you've been looking for a space where Black Lives Matter, trans lives matter, your uterus, your own fucking business, things like scientific facts have more weight than your opinions, and maybe you're really fucking tired of the NRA and the Second Amendment crowd holding the rest of us hostage. If any of those things or all of those things resonated, then you found your space, because we are right there with you on all of it.
Exactly. And we've been homeschooling long enough to know that finding that is like finding a needle in a haystack in the homeschool world. So welcome, settle in and relax. Today we have a topic for you that might sound silly because there's a bit of a running joke in the homeschool world about kids not knowing what grade they're in. But we'll get into some real meat about how grade levels, quote unquote, work in the homeschool world. So we might answer some questions lingering in the recesses of your mind about transitioning from one grade to another. Or we might just add a bit of levity to your day when you see just how entirely lost I perpetually am when it comes to what grade my kids are in. Either way, we have some good points in store for you today.
Yeah. Sometimes you are a little bit hopeless on those things, but that's okay. It's part of why we love you.
I am not tethered to that world.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All right. First, before we dive into that, we like to start off all of our episodes with a weekly recap. It's part of our just attempt at keeping it real. We like to tell you what's going on, what's going well, what's not, what we're excited about, the only us kind of stuff that happened in the past week. Like I said, the full picture. We try. That said, this week we've got a little bit of a twist because full disclosure, we are recording this episode early. I am going to be out of town for my wedding anniversary when we would typically record this episode. And since we don't have psychic abilities, it's a little bit challenging to tell you exactly how our week has been this far ahead of time. It'd be a little bit disingenuous. That said, I will say by the time you are listening to this, I've hopefully survived a week of iReady testing. Yes, I know all about the lawsuit around iReady, and I'm glad this is probably our last year of dealing with iReady. And I've hopefully just wrapped up a long weekend in St. Louis, checking out some museums and finally doing the touristy stuff at the Arch. I've been flying in and out of St. Louis to see my parents for probably almost 25 years now, and we still haven't actually gone and done the inside of the Arch. So we're doing it. It's going to happen.
It is an interesting adventure. It is fun. We have done it. We did it on our way back, I think, at one point from one of our summers out west where we just traipse around and camp all summer, which we love. I will say I have solo traveled in the far corners of the world, as I know you have with your kid as well, that we are confident solo travelers. We are not wilting flowers who don't feel safe leaving the confines of our town. I've been to Antarctica. Not that there's that much danger there, but St. Louis is the only place I have ever felt unsafe being alone with my kids. The only place I have felt in the daytime. It was a lot. So I
You weren't
had
hanging out with 50 Cent. You weren't like, this is totally my jam.
I had done my homework in advance because we had a camper van that was, so it was 22 and a half feet long, but it was the Mercedes Sprinter that Amazon uses to deliver stuff, the really, really big version of that. And the wheelbase on it is not 22 and a half feet long. That's bumper to bumper. So technically I could fit in a parking space if the ass of the van could hang out over like a grassy thing behind it or something like that. If I tried to do it by a sidewalk, it would take up the whole sidewalk because the wheel would be touching the curb and then the ass of the van would take up the sidewalk. And obviously that's not amazing for pedestrians, disabled people, etc. So the alternative is I would need 2 back-to-back parking spaces that I could pull through and just take up extra space. And if I have to pay for 2 spaces, no problem. So on the Arch website at the time through the National Park Service, there was a thing about large vehicle parking. I would always do my research before I went and knew where I was going, popped that address in my GPS. We get there. I can see the Arch off in the distance, but I'm not there. I'm in this area of dilapidated warehouses and it says you have arrived. And I'm like, okay. And there's this mail carrier, a USPS mail carrier coming towards me from the other direction. And you could just see this look of horror on his face that I was an alone woman with a kid because they can only see people in the front seat. And he pulled up beside me and was like, what are you doing here? Like, no. You need to be out of here. And I was like, okay. So I went over by the Arch and apparently this overflow parking does not exist or oversized parking, right? And so I'm looking. I finally find a thing across from the baseball stadium. I don't know. Cardinals? I don't know. I know nothing. I feel like I remember seeing a picture of a red bird on it. I know nothing about American sports. So I pay for my 2 parking spaces and we go skipping off to the Arch. I'm like, great, problem solved. We've done this. I start walking and now I know where the Arch is also because I've driven around it like 17 times trying to find parking. So I know exactly where the Arch is in relationship to where I am. So we start walking and we had tickets that I had pre-purchased, I think, to go up. You go in these little like egg cars up to the top and you can see the gross looking Mississippi River, but it's really cool. There's a museum downstairs with all sorts of plaques and whatever you get to read. It's really cool about Western expansion. It's cool, or so I think it is. And I'll tell you why I don't really know. So we get there. Oh, no. So we leave the van, we start walking, and this construction worker in the little tiny bulldozer thingy chases me down and is like, whoa, where are you going? No, you can't walk down there. This was my whole experience in St. Louis, was just like middle-aged white men being like, no, you're in danger, girl. And I was like, okay. So he says, no, he says, there's this man who lives down here who's unhoused, who has some mental health struggles. He didn't say it quite this way. I'm going to clean this up a little bit, right? And he has like raw meat all over his face and his body. And he gives us a hard time to the point that we've had to call the police because he threatens us. So like you and your children, and my kids were smaller at the time, they're like skipping along. Like, we're going to see the Arch, He's like, no, you're not walking down there. He's like, walk down this way. So I walk down that way. We get there. Now, within our camper van, we had our camper van built because I bought a passenger van and then we had it converted to a camper van. I had a safe built into my van, and it was really funny because when the guy was building it, he was like, "Oh, like for guns or whatever." And I was like, "No." I was like, "Liam has his little puppy, his little golden retriever puppy, and Aiden has a little bear, and they've had them forever." And I'm like, "If the van catches fire when we're not in it at some point, that's fine, but I need a fireproof safe so that little bear and puppy will be okay." And it was built in. And that came from our days of having a travel trailer, because then you have propane. So they do blow up sometimes, right? So my mentality, even though our van ran on solar and whatever, I'm like, it's still got a tank of diesel fuel in it. I'm just going to carry the safe concept forward and make sure that they're good. We get there and I'm like, oh my God, I should have taken Puppy and Little Bear out of the safe. Because anytime we weren't in the van, we would put them in there. It was called the bear box for Little Bear. And I'm like, oh my God, I should have put them in my bag, because if the van gets stolen, I'm like, I don't care about the van. The van's insured. Go ahead, steal it. It's fine. It's insured to the hilt. Take it. But I'm like, oh my God, Puppy and Little Bear. So we got there and our tickets for the bubble thing to go up to the top were in like, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour, because it took us so long to find parking that it was coming up close. I had built in more time originally. And I was like, "Kids, you have 20 minutes to read every plaque in this museum. We're going up, we're coming down, we're leaving." Right? Like that was it. We were gone. That was my one and only visit to St. Louis. And it was just, I've been to plenty of places that are not polished, but it was the only place where like I was just consistently warned that I was in danger. That's never happened to me in so many places. And I was like, I would like to leave now, please. So yeah.
I had one time where I actually got picked up by the police. They refused to allow me to continue walking through the neighborhood I was in. Not in St. Louis. This was in a different city. But yeah, they were like absolutely like, and I did not trust that it was necessarily the police, because there was a car following me down the road, like yelling things at me. And I was just like, ignore.
Yeah.
And then finally they got close enough and possibly even threatened to detain me or something, because they were very concerned about it, which in fairness, I heard some gunshots. And so then I was like, let me actually look at the car that's following me and see if this is a better solution than the gunshots that I just heard. So I think we can probably handle St. Louis. Not our first time in St. Louis. We go there shopping and things like that, right? Because my folks live in Missouri, and like I said, fly in and out of St. Louis all the time. But yeah, St. Louis is an interesting.
I've only been to where the arch is. That was it. And normally, if we visit a place, we would branch out and like, oh, let's go find a cute place to get burgers for lunch or something. No, we left. We were out, and it was an experience, right? So. Yeah, but the little egg thing was cute, and I'm sure the plaques were interesting. I was too stressed to even comprehend what I was reading at that point, because I was so worried about Puppy and Little Bear that I was like, I can't even focus on what's on these plaques about Western expansion. But I hope you have a great time.
It'll be fine. Like, it's one of those things. We talked about doing it. We were going to do it the next time we went to see my parents, because the kiddo was finally big enough. And then the pandemic happened. Yeah. And then every time we were flying back, it seemed like there was like another big spike. And I was like, oh, I don't really want to be inside such a small enclosed space with a bunch of other people, And so like, all right, we're finally doing it. And we haven't flown in and out of St. Louis as much recently, because there's finally a smaller regional airport that's got a lot more flights. It used to be, like a couple times a week you could fly in and out, but now we can fly closer to their home. We don't have to drive quite so much, but we're doing it this time, and yeah, it should be good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So as I said, since we aren't psychic, let's instead swap out our typical weekly recap with a random but fun question.
Ooh.
Are you down?
Mm-hmm, I'm good.
All right. Okay. So my question for you, Megan, what are 3 things currently keeping you afloat as a parent right now?
Okay. 3 things currently keeping me afloat. Okay. Sleep. Oh, not enough sleep. I wish I could get more sleep. But I just freaking love sleep. I took a nap the other day, and it was one of those where within minutes of settling into my bed, I became one with the bed and was in a coma. I think I drooled on my pillow. I was just out. So whether it's an overnight sleep or a nap, or even just closing my eyes on the bus, if I like today we were on the way home from the mall and I just closed my eyes on the bus, and it wasn't actual sleep, but it was enough that I was like, okay, I felt a little bit more recharged when I got off the bus. But yeah, I freaking love sleep. I want more of it. So yeah. Creative adventures. That's been one of my 2026 goals, is creating more. It does create a bit of a push-pull in my life, because when I am taking time for myself to create, whether that's sewing or painting or cross-stitching or something like that, I feel the guilt of not being productive. And one would argue, like, I made my shirt. One would argue that's productive, right? Like, I made my own clothing, but it's not productive in the way that society tends to value. And so sometimes I still have that nagging feeling that I should be doing something productive. But then on the flip side, like when I'm busy working on actual things that need to get done, whether it's for Homeschool Moms Unfiltered stuff or for my kids or whatever, I'm like, oh, I wish I had more time to sew this week or something. So it is creating a little bit of a push pull. But I did recently paint a mural in our living room. It was really big, and I probably should have done something a little bit smaller, because when I was done, I was so done. And it was funny because my mom loved it, because she's your mom and she's going to be like, yeah, you did a good job. But she kept sending me other murals and be like, this would be really cute in your room. And I was like, no, I'm a retired muralist now. One and done. I'm done. I was so tired. So I might cave on that later, but for now, one and done. And then I should probably say my kids for the third thing, but I'm going to say the dog. And I have a good reason, okay? Aside from the fact that she's just the snuggliest little bug, which is so good. And we have so many studies that talk about your brain chemistry and when you pet a dog and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's so true. But also, she forces me to get out. And so she forces me to get out I'm in charge of her big long walk most days. She's actually out with Astrid right now for her big long walk, because we're recording on an odd day for us. But it's good that I am forced to pause, get fresh air, get sunshine, get my body moving. And she just, when you take her for a walk, she's a doodle, and doodle smile, which is so strange, but so true. And she just looks back at you like 100 times during every walk with this huge smile on her face that she's like, this is amazing. Please tell me you're having as much fun as I'm having, because this is the best time ever. And I know we do this every day, but it's still amazing. And it's hard for that not to be infectious. So yeah, I'll pick her over my kids for that one. So sorry, kids. They never listen, so it's fine. Okay, challenge question for you. Tell us something that you do as a parent that would sound questionable out of context, but works well in your home or for you.
Okay. How about hair sniffing?
Whose hair are you sniffing? So, I'm not judging, but whose hair are you sniffing?
Well, I mean, I know hair sniffing is a thing, but outside of smut books, it's kind of creeper behavior. But look, I have a tween who isn't big on washing his hair. So he regularly asks me for a sniff test before conceding that it is in fact time to wash his hair. There's this whole like a body wash or a full wash, including the hair, right? And so I can usually force the world's fastest body wash, but a hair wash, it's really hard for me to require that without the hair sniff test. He's gotten big enough that now a lot of times he doesn't even have to get that close before I'm like, whoo, yeah, shower. all of it, the whole thing. But yeah, I'm going to go with I do way more hair sniffing than I ever thought I would.
I feel like some adults have really good sniff test abilities. I am not good at being able to sniff something and determine if it's gone bad. That's like not my jam, because then I think it smells a little funny, but maybe that's in my head because I'm paranoid and afraid that it's gone bad. So maybe I'm just thinking it smells worse than it is. And so my parents have lived with us for a really long time. And my mom was always the official food sniffer, because my husband grew up in the Caribbean. And at the time, power outages were so common where he lived that if your power went out for however many hours, once your fridge came back on, your fridge just continued functioning as usual. You didn't go through it, check the food. You just kept eating the food that was in the fridge. And so I could hand you something that has flies on it, and my husband would brush the flies away and be like, it's fine. It's fine. Just put some breadcrumbs on it. It'll be fine. So he's not a valid source of that. But my mom is good with sniff testing. I've never had her sniff my hair or anyone else's hair, but hey, if it's working in your house, I'm thrilled. That's great. Yeah. All right. So let's dive into today's topic. I think you'd have to be super new to homeschooling to not have encountered this situation before. But the long and short of it is that someone well-intentioned usually, is trying to kickstart a conversation. And they'll say to your kiddo, what grade are you in? It's one of those conversation starters that's just so common for kids. It's like, there are some that are super annoying. Like with boys, I don't know if you encountered this, Amanda, but with boys, it's always like, do you play sports? And if you have a non-sportsy boy, they get really tired of that really soon. So there's some of those questions. And what grade are you in is kind of standard fare kid question as a conversation opener. It's kind of like when you live in North Carolina and the conversation opener is, what church do you attend? But I digress. Anyway, it can be so humbling to watch them absolutely short circuit trying to come up with an answer for this person. I mean, here we are, we're stepping out on a limb and homeschooling. We've taken the path less traveled for the most part, knowing that not everyone supports our decision, maybe harboring some of our own doubts, depending on how far into this journey you are and what sort of season you're in that moment. And then a question that seems so simple to people with a traditional view of education trips our kids up, and it looks like we are doing nothing.
Yeah, right. And then the parents and caregivers often start feeling like they have to over explain that they are really educating their kids. Like, really, we are, and that they're meeting their kids where they're at, and, right. And it's like, it doesn't go smoothly the vast majority of the time. And it often ends up leaving everyone involved questioning what the hell just happened.
Yeah, it's so true. Because if you ask that same question of a public school kid, the answer is on point. It's quick, it's smooth. But in the homeschool world, there's a whole different approach to grade levels that can add some real nuance to these discussions and complicate things.
Yeah. And look, we'll start off by saying they don't even have to be discussions. You don't owe everyone, or really anyone, an answer or insight into what you're doing and why you're doing it. You don't owe people that. We've talked about energy levels and available spoons in the past. You get to decide who deserves your energy and who doesn't. Okay. Someone random, like the mail carrier or some supermarket cashier who's just trying to make small talk, might get a quick, he's in fourth grade. That's it. That's all. It doesn't even matter if he's actually in fourth grade. It's just a quick answer that moves the conversation along. Whereas a medical professional involved in your kid's care, or a coach that will be interacting with your child frequently going forward, they might benefit from knowing just a little bit more detail about what's going on.
Yeah. I've come to that conclusion in another aspect of my life here in Portugal, actually, because our dog Waffles is a Bernedoodle. And when she was a puppy, she had more of the traditional Bernese coloring, the tan, the black, the white. And then by about 1.5, she had mostly turned black. She still does have some Bernese patches, but they're hard to see when she's out for a walk because they're on the backs of her legs. Speak of the devil, look who just came back from a walk. They're on the backs of her legs, or they're in places where her harness is covering when she's wearing her harness. And so you can't really see them. And she really does look like a Portuguese water dog. And they are a source of national pride here in Portugal. I mean, even tourists are like, oh my gosh, we've had an authentic experience because we just saw a Portuguese water dog. So when we first moved here, I didn't realize that this was a thing that was going to happen every single time we took her out for a walk. Sometimes it's 2, 3, 4, 5 times during a walk. And people would stop us and try to confirm, oh, she's a Portuguese water dog. They'd be like, does she like the water? Stuff like that. And in the beginning, I'd explain that she totally does look like a Portuguese water dog and go, I'd explain, but she's not. And I'd go on. Now, most of the time, I'm just like, yep. And I thank them because they usually say, oh, she's beautiful or she's cute or whatever. And I'm like, yep, thanks. And that has simplified my life. I'm like, go on. What does it matter? Waffles is having a bit of an identity crisis over it, but we'll talk her through it. I mean, sometimes we're walking down the street and people don't even speak the same language as us. And they go, Obama dog, because Obama had 2 Portuguese water dogs. So me, Waffles, the whole family, we're just rolling with it. Waffles is whatever someone says she is on the street these days, because it's not something that needs to be a full conversation.
Okay, but now I want to know how many people listened to this podcast and were in Lisbon and thought they saw a Portuguese water dog. And now they're like, wait a minute, was that Megan with her dog? Like, what is like, oh no.
The funny thing is,
Yeah.
like, people don't necessarily assume that we speak English because we We don't look like tourists in our own city because we're not walking around with backpacks on, and, we dress kind of the way people dress
Well, you're
here, and we
walking
have
a
a dog
dog or
here and,
yeah.
all of that. And so people who don't know that we speak English will be behind us and they'll be like, look, it's a Portuguese water dog. And we hear it and we just don't even bother, We're like, they get like so excited to see one. I'm like, sure, yep.
Yeah. But I mean, that does get to the point of it, right? Like worrying about what strangers think about anything really, but for the purposes of this podcast, about what grade your kid is in, or even your kid's reaction to that question and how well they represent themselves. It really shouldn't be very high on your priority list.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're new to homeschooling and feeling a bit shaky still, it is totally understandable that letting that roll off your back can absolutely be easier said than done.
Can I add too? I think age plays a factor in this as well. You and I are in our mid-ish 40s, and I feel like there's more confidence that comes with age sometimes, where when I was younger, sometimes like my mother-in-law would walk all over me or something like that. And then as I aged and I had children and I grew into myself a little bit too, I feel like you get a little bit more of that as you go. So if you're a little bit younger too, and you're not quite feeling that yet, oh, just wait till how powerful you feel in your 40s. I'll tell my mother-in-law to go take a long walk off a short cliff any day of the week now. No problem. So it comes. We got you.
Yeah, I'm not at that point with my mother-in-law, but I'm happy to just not talk to her. So there is that. All right. Anyway, look, I'm going to be honest. My child definitely isn't in any single grade level in anything. But we do talk about what grade his same aged peers are in. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on about why and how and all of that jazz. But he knows he can easily just tell them that's the grade he's in, right? It isn't a conversation where I'm all, you're in sixth grade. It's more, look, if someone asks, just tell them you're in sixth grade. Done and done, right? Easy peasy. It doesn't have to be a thing. No one's going to come up later and be like, I'm sorry, could you please provide proof that
Yeah.
you are in fact in sixth grade? There's no, I told the wrong grade level jail or detention center. It's okay. Because the reality is, oftentimes in the homeschooling world, grade levels, like they're just not the same. In school, age dictates the grade you're in. And the grade you're in dictates what classes you take, generally speaking, of course. But in homeschooling, everything is fluid. Your kiddo might be one level in math, reading at a different level, science at some other level, and then writing somewhere in between. You can have a kid doing fourth grade math and sixth grade writing and casually reading something for fun that would make me need a dictionary and a snack break. It can truly be all over the place. And it just doesn't fit the same way. So using the grade for my kiddo that his same aged peers are in, it works for us because we need to do things like camps and class signups with various organizations and community providers. And they want to be able to know how to clump the kids together. How do you group them? When I'm registering him for camp and he's being slotted by grade, that's usually just another way of asking for his age. But at this age, they don't say, well, are they 9 to 11? They're like, is it fourth grade? Are they in fifth grade? Are they in sixth grade? So it's just easier to just list that chronological grade. It accomplishes the same thing. Like, how about you? How do you do it with your kids? I'm guessing very differently.
Ironically, kind of the same. The difference is that I can never remember what grade they're supposed to be in the first place, but I do work off the chronological age grade for the same thing. When I'm registering for summer camps and programs and stuff like that, our intention is to use it that way. But it is so infrequent that I have to write it down or provide that information that I do tend to forget. To complicate the matter, we've moved so many times and the birthday cutoffs are different in state to state. So in the beginning, I was trying to adjust with that, but then that got even more confusing. So now I just stick with Florida. That was our first homeschool location, the only place my kids ever went to school. It's still our current legal address in the US. So I opted to simplify and just always work off of Florida and not try to adjust depending on where we live and all that stuff. My youngest is the trickiest one to keep track of because he never went to school. So with the older ones, I can think back and do some mental math, which is intense. Like, okay, I pulled him out after second grade and he was 8, and that was such and such a year. And then I can do the math from there. But my baby, who's huge, never went to school. So I can't do that with him. Thankfully, I was pregnant at the same time as my best friend. So the number of times that I have sent her a text message while she's at work during the day and being like, I'm filling out a camp registration form. What grade is Mia in? Like, it's no small thing. And I'm so thankful that she doesn't judge me because she's one of my best friends in the world. And I'm like, yeah, I still don't know. I still don't know what grade he's supposed to be in. No clue.
Well, yeah, I mean, we totally have that. It's easier for me to remember because my nephew is in a brick and mortar school and he's a grade below my kiddo.
Mm.
And then my kiddo's best friend is still in brick and mortar school and he's a grade ahead of my kiddo. So it definitely helps me keep track. But the unfortunate thing about the actual interaction is that oftentimes we're the ones made to feel like the out of touch weirdos. No matter where the kid is with their learning or whatever, kids aren't evenly developed across subjects, whether they're homeschooling or they're in brick and mortar school. Very few kids are exactly the same spot in every subject. Schools at least attempt to force this consistency that doesn't naturally exist. With homeschooling, we have the opportunity. Strengths can leap ahead. Kids can go as fast as they want or as fast as they need to. But struggles can also be supported without shame. It's not like, oh, well, you have to go to this special class or you have pull out to work on this thing that you're behind on, or you failed this thing again. If you don't pass this one subject, you're not going to pass this grade and go on to the next. Like, you don't need any of that nonsense because the whole point of homeschooling is finding where your kid is at and working with them to get ahead. Does that mean that you can't so easily say, oh, my kid is in 5th grade? Well, I mean, you can still say it and let people just move on. Might not necessarily be accurate, but it doesn't matter.
Who cares? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It isn't our job to normalize our version of this mentality broadly, which thank goodness, because talk about a salmon swimming upstream. I mean, the fact that kids don't need to sit at a desk for 6 hours a day blows their minds. Imagine this. This is taking it too far. But even for us as homeschool parents and caregivers, especially in the beginning, it can be really hard to make that mindset shift. The oddball grades all over the place thing isn't a gap. It's not a failure. It's more accurate. It's in line with the way children develop. So yeah, school is saying stay with your age group, and homeschooling is all about let's be honest about what you actually know. And that's our starting point, and we move forward from there together. And so it's just very, very different.
Well, that's just it. In so many ways, grade levels are almost kind of an illusion. They function primarily as administrative tools, not actual measures of intelligence or ability, even though they might want you to think that. And if you look at standardized test scores, they're not even a good indicator of what kids actually know. Realistically, grade levels help society organize large groups of children, but it's kind of like classroom management. Super important if you're managing a class of 25 or 30 kids, but not so important if you've only got your own kiddo or kids to manage. You don't need to be well versed in large classroom management to teach your children at home. You don't need to be well versed in grade levels to teach your kids at home.
Hmm.
With homeschooling, you don't need that structure. You can actually respond specifically to your kids with what they need at any level, at any pace. That's what you get to do. I will say, if you're homeschooling and you're a curriculum user like I am, you might even find that some of your favorites just don't even list grade levels. So some curriculum go by letters, which can roughly align with traditional grade levels. But the idea behind that is that since it's a letter, it's hoping that homeschooling parents will be more flexible with what ages are using it, and you can combine kids with the same level, or just a lot more flexibility in it, and helping people kind of break out of the mindset of this is for first grade, this is for second grade.
That's been a trend lately in sewing pattern making, where patterns aren't done by number sizes, but you cut on a specific color. So you're not an extra large, you're purple. And
Hmm,
I mean, if we're creating that mind shift for adults who have this sort of mind warp about body size and shape and things like that. Like, hello, our kids, of course, have the same thing about intelligence and like, why am I working on second grade work when I'm this age? And so when we can create that for them, I mean, we just had this conversation in a coaching session over the weekend where Amanda recommended something and she was like, just pull the cover off. The kid doesn't need to see the cover and realize what grade level it is. It's totally fine. Just go do that thing. So yeah, I love that we have that flexibility so that they don't feel bad because I want to sew the purple size. I don't want to be a 14 or whatever I come out to on that pattern. You know what I mean? Like it
yeah.
feels better.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, there's definitely some of that depending on where you're at in the whole process. Then some curriculum does give age ranges. One that I'm thinking of right off the top of my head is Michael Clay Thompson. So their stuff will be like, this one is appropriate for 11 to 13-year-olds, which it can be great for general direction if you are just getting started. I mean, these levels are like, you'll see things that are like, this is the poodle level. And you're like, what the hell is the poodle level? Like, give me a little bit of direction. Like, as it turns out, my child is not a poodle. So it is helpful for there to be something like, appropriate for ages 11 to 13. And yes, go look at the placement test or the placement guide or whatever. But there's absolutely nothing that says once your kiddo finishes that, you can't move on. You start wherever you need to. And even if your kiddo is only 11, if they're done with the 11 to 13 unit and you feel like they're ready, you move on to the next level. It's totally fine. Then on the other side, you have some curriculum that will be like, this is good for elementary and middle school, like a huge range. And you can supplement if you want more writing assignments, or you can pull out certain things if you feel like, oh, I read the Common Sense Media thing on this documentary and I'm not sure it's really appropriate for my kiddo, right? Like just loads of flexibility. But even if a curriculum does have an actual grade level that's aligned with brick and mortar standards, it doesn't matter. It can be a starting place. It can help you figure out where you might want to start, but there's absolutely nothing that says as a homeschooler, you need to stick to those same narrow definitions of what's right, like what you can teach right now to be quote unquote correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not even a curriculum person, and I agree with all of that. But then what does impact us a little bit, and you also, because you're year round people, right, is add to the fact that not all homeschoolers are sticking to a traditional school calendar, which, depending on where you're listening to, for reference, in the US, that's something like September to May, give or take, depending on what region you live in. It could be like August to May, September to June, whatever. So the very traditional mindset is that grade levels change come May or June. And then when you start in the fall, you're in the new one. And so that's how society works and thinks. But the reality is in homeschooling, you have people doing all sorts of stuff. You have people that are doing year round schooling, which we personally love because then we can travel off peak. Do you want to go somewhere in the summer when everyone else is off or during spring break? Like I don't. It's expensive and it's crowded. So yeah, do those sorts of things. We have the flexibility to pace and take breaks whenever we want to. I mean, when my kids were in public school, come March, we were all done from March till the end of the year. The kids were done. I was done. The teachers were done. We were all done. We needed more consistent breaks and to spread that out over a longer period of time because everybody was burnt out. And whatever happened from March on was at like 20% retention and capacity because we're done. Who works best when they're fried? So some examples might be things like doing school in the summer to avoid the heat. We've lived in Miami and Texas. Like, hello, it rains for the entire month of June in Florida. And in Texas, it's like living on the sun. So I'd rather take time off when it's decent outside and I'm not going to fry to death going outside. I'd rather travel in the fall when it's cheaper and everybody else is in school. I'd rather take random weeks off to prevent burnout. And you don't even have to pre-schedule them and then like force yourself to get to them. If you feel like you need a week, you can take a week. You can take time off to celebrate an event. You have cousins coming into town. There's something going on in town that you're super excited about. You want to go to Comic-Con, whatever. Make it happen. Then there's times where you power through stuff in bursts because you're super on it. Do you ever have those things where you're just like, everything is rocking and rolling and lining up and things are great? Okay, fine, keep going. Do that thing. You don't have to hold back in order to pace yourself in that way either. It works in both directions. So we know that the reality is we are not weird or behind, nor do we owe anyone else an explanation about how ahead we are or how we got ahead. We're just not on that calendar. We're on a different calendar. We're not doing the same thing you're doing, which is totally cool because what you were doing in the public school system or the traditional system was designed around crop seasons. And like 1% of those kids are actually going to pick crops. So who's the weird one now organizing your life around crop seasons when none of you were farmers? Like, that's weird.
I think that that's a really high number, actually, 1%, because I went to school in the place where some kids spent the summer picking corn and some kids were not there in the spring or in the fall. But even then, it was a very small percentage in the farming community.
Yeah.
So it was like, I mean, it's a fraction of a percentage, I would guess. Yeah. So,
yeah. Because when we had our camper van, we used to do harvest hosts where you can stay at farms and stuff like that. And most people were bringing in farm labor, seasonal help and stuff like that. Like these kids are even still not picking corn and not picking berries and whatever else. But for some reason, school is still entirely structured around that system.
Yeah. Oh, it's true. I mean, it is one of those wonderful hold-ons, throwbacks, however you say it. I would say, though, that I would imagine for you and your crew as unschoolers, this grade level thing and discussion gets even more complicated.
Yeah, it does to some extent. I would say that. The only time I'm really engaging with grade levels ever is if I'm registering the kids for something that exists in the more traditional world. And I will say that happened more when they were younger. Now I notice as teens, things tend to be more age grouped as opposed to grade grouped, which is great because I have had to text my best friend far less often to figure out what grade my kid is in. I'm like, he's going to camp this summer and the sign up was for ages 13 to 15. I was like, I know the answer to this one. This is awesome. Okay. So
you do. Your husband doesn't, but you do. So
no,
at least there's
please. That. I was like, yeah, he has no clue. He's like, how many kids do we have again? Yeah. But we did an episode about a month or so ago about the way we unschool in my home. And I have coined the term intentional unschooling. It's my new thing. So if you missed that one, go check it out. But my kids in particular do like to engage with things that are more traditional sometimes in their own unique ways. They're all kind of doing their own thing. So we end up having some traditional learning seasons, if you will. For example, my oldest kiddo is taking a summer program that is a prereq for a program that starts in the fall. One's through Johns Hopkins University, the other one's through University of Washington. That's very traditional. My youngest kiddo, Liam, tends to take a different math program over the summer than he does during the traditional school year. So like this past school year that we're winding down, he took Algebra 2 and AP Stats. And then this summer, he's taking Introduction to Number Theory. And then in the fall, he'll start pre-calc. And do we need to operate on that sort of schedule? No. Especially now because in the fall, he's moving into solely one-on-one tutoring. He's not going to be in group classes anymore, which we needed to do because our time zone sucks and we couldn't find group classes at the right time anymore. But so yeah, that happens. And then like the AP test, right? The AP schedule is the same globally. So he has to take the AP test on May 7th. That's when the test is held for everyone all over the world. So if you're going to engage in things like that, there will be that bit of crossover. But I still never have a clue what grade they're actually in most of the time. And we don't really have a need because most unschoolers aren't marking these grade jumps anyway. They're really irrelevant to us. It's not the world we live in. It's just a very different mindset. We're just kind of living and learning and thriving and doing our thing. And everything is continuous and there's no segments and there's seasons, but there's not scheduled starts and stops. So the idea of graduating from kindergarten or 8th grade or something would be a super foreign concept to my kids. I mean, we didn't even do a high school thing. It was just like, I've ordered your diploma because you need it to submit to this place. And they're like, okay, thanks. You know, like it wasn't like a huge milestone because life just continues as usual. They will continue to live and be curious in the same way that they always have. There's not a change there. And I've talked about that mentality in other episodes as well. The idea that there's school and not school, kind of these delineations that so many people have who live in a more traditional world, even if you're homeschooling, but you're homeschooling more traditionally, which I have always felt can, not necessarily, can be an impediment to learning and curiosity. Kids can sometimes fall into this mindset of, I did the required thing that you asked me to do. Now it's my time. And sometimes that me time can be filled with curiosity and productivity and joy. I know that's how it is in your house, Amanda. Like after your school hours are done, your kiddo is like, I'm working on a personal project and I'm creating this film and I'm doing this and I'm reading this book that I'm super excited about. So that delineation is not guaranteed failure. I'm not saying that, but I do know plenty of times where there's a push and pull that can occur where the parent cannot get their kiddo to infuse anything curiosity driven or growth mindset oriented into the non-required learning times because the lines of these segments were drawn a little too boldly. And the kid is like, I did the required thing. Now you can't require the other things. And it's like, well, I'm not trying to require them. I'm trying for you to live a really passionate, sparked life. But that's okay. I digress anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, we almost went coaching session there. But look, I will say, if you want to do some sort of graduation ceremony again as the academic
Yeah.
aggressive, that's totally okay. There are
Yeah.
lots of homeschool groups that do them. I'm certain you can find someone locally who's doing some kind of a graduation ceremony and you can sign up. It's the same with proms and all of those kinds of things. If that matters to you, that's fine. Families create their own traditions. Grown-ups talk their kids into graduation photo shoots. You totally see that in some of the homeschool groups. We did a 5th grade graduation thing. My kiddo got to experience it. My parents came into town for it. It was fun.
Yeah.
Like his cousin is going to do it. His best friend had already had one. We were in a position where we could. And I knew that our learning was about to take a shift. And those moments in time were going to be less clear. So we went ahead and did it. We were in Southern California, so we got the lei that's the school colors, and we got a candy lei, and it was fun. No harm, no foul. If it works for you, great. If you couldn't care less about it, also great.
Can I just interject though and say, if you sign up for a Celis because they offer a graduation, please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't. It's a shit program on so many levels. It is such shit. And the graduation, not worth it. Anyway, go ahead.
That's it. There are so many other ways. That's it. There are so many other ways to have a graduation ceremony and to make your own traditions that actually matter. Look, some parents really care about seeing their kid walk across the stage, but for the most part, you got no good photos from that. If you want really cute photos, buy the cheap gown and do the photo shoot or whatever it is. Have a professional photographer get an actual decent photo of you standing with your high school graduate. You don't need a Celis for that. All right. Anyway, so all of that aside, back to the topic. What can you say when you or your kiddo ends up in one of these awkward conversations about what grade they're in? Again, first, you can just pick any grade and say it. Honestly, as long as you're close, strangers aren't going to bat an eye. I mean, maybe don't say your 13-year-old is in 2nd grade, but get close and it'll be fine. Truly, it'll be, just throw a grade out. If they look like they're about 6th grade, fantastic. If they look like they could be in high school, they're sophomore. It's fine. If that makes you feel a little uncomfortable because you're like, but it's just not honest, you as the grown-up can say something like, well, we don't really use grade levels. Or you could say, oh, right now we're kind of in between levels.
Okay, I'm sorry. That just has vibes where you're like on a blind date or like on a Hinge date and the guy's like, I'm between jobs right now. And you're like, okay, sorry. That's all I got from that one.
Well, I mean, it was a great way to shut down the blind date and it would be a great way to shut down this conversation. You could say something like, it depends on the subject. Just be aware of the fact that if you say it depends on the subject, they're going to ask, well, what does that mean? Where are you in this subject? What about the common? The conversation is not going to end. So if you're not trying to shut down the conversation, go for it. But if you're trying to shut down the conversation, go with the blind date option. We're between levels. You could even say, like, well, age-wise, they'd be in X grade. Wherever you're at, if this is a person that knows you're homeschooling or someone that you want to have that conversation with, you got lots of options. If it's someone that you don't want to have that conversation with, you don't have to. There are ways to shut this down without just looking at them and walking away, like refusing to answer. It's all good. For your kiddos, it can be helpful to give them scripts to practice these conversations, just like we practice other things like consent around hugs or kissing older relatives, or even apologies. Like, look, there's a 3-part apology. You should say this. And just because you apologize doesn't mean the person is immediately ready to be best friends again. They need time. You talk through those things. You can do the exact same thing with this. It can be something as simple as when someone asks what grade they're in, they share their age instead. I'm 10, right? Like, oh, okay, like, fine. Most of the times the stranger's going to be like, oh, I've got a grandson who's 10. Okay, great. The conversation's moved on. They could say, I'm homeschooled, so it's flexible. I'm homeschooled, so I'm not actually in a grade at school. They could also say, I do different levels for different subjects. I wouldn't do that with a little kid because inevitably they're going to get more questions and then they're still going to be on the hot seat going, like, I don't know. But an older kid might be more than happy to dive into that when the person is like, oh, well, what does that mean? And they get a chance to, I mean, humble brag a little,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But truly, you get to decide. Do you want to go all in with full-fledged honesty? Do you want quick and easy simplicity? Do you want social convenience? Do what works for you.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There are other scenarios, though, where this question can feel a little bit murky. So we are recording this in April, and all month long, I've been seeing so many posts from parents saying, if I pull my kid out of school now, what do I need to do to make sure that they can finish the year and move up to the next grade for the fall? And typically, before anybody gives answers, they'll clarify in the comments, like, are you continuing to homeschool for the fall? Or are you just pulling them out through the end of the year and then putting them back and planning for them to go to the next grade in public school in the fall? Like, what are you doing here? And they're like, no, I'm going to keep homeschooling. Okay, great. So it's a bit of a mind fuck to explain this to parents that they need to take the rest of the year off right now that they've pulled their kid out of school, deschool, and then when they're ready to start, meet their kid where they're at, subject by subject, when they resume, whether that's in the fall or a little bit later into the year. They're new and they're trying to wrap their minds around so much. But if you find yourself in this boat, here's what we need you to remember. You are not part of a system anymore. You're out of the system if you've withdrawn your kid. So none of that matters anymore. You do not need permission to advance your kid to the next grade. You say when they're in the next grade, okay? There is no gatekeeper anymore of grade levels. There's no principal, there's no superintendent who's saying, this child just went from 4th grade to 5th grade. You do that now. And if that feels a little scary, yeah, we get that. We were trained that this is the one way you educate a child, and this is the only path to success in life, is if you follow this exact prescription. And we already see the results of that. Hello, 51% of our country-ish voted for somebody who talked about Haitian immigrants eating people's pets. And they were like, yep, that's happening. So is that system the one and only way to educate a human being? Because most of those people went through that system, okay? It's not churning out people with high reading levels and critical thinking skills. So are you doing something dangerous by skewing from that system? No, you're going to do a good job and your kid's going to be amazing. It's okay. Take the break. Take the time to deschool. If you pull your kid out of school on a Friday and put them in front of Mia Academy, which P.S. we also dislike Mia Academy. If you put them in front of Mia Academy on Monday, that's not going to go well. It's not. Even Amanda, who's the aggressive academic one, is going to be like, yeah, it's not good. Don't do that thing. So yeah, learning doesn't reset in June. There's nothing magical in June except for crop cycles. There's no reason June has to be the month that these things turn over or take place. There's no academic cliff that your children are going to fall off of if you haven't finished something by June. None of this matters anymore. You have left that structure. None of it matters. Promise.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's not like, well, in summer, they magically leap forward by a grade level and now we do whatever. Okay. Because I am the one in so many curriculum circles and conversations, I tend to hear more of the, we finished our science curriculum or we finished this in March. Now what? And this is another one of those super common questions. We did a whole episode a while back as well. But the reality is, you have options. You have quite a few options, actually.
Because
The
homeschooling's flexible. Hello. Right? Like
Yeah.
that's it's the name of the game.
Yeah, hopefully you're picking that up now. So look, high level, your first option, keep going. Just start the next level. Keep the momentum rolling. That's totally fine. You can absolutely do that. You can take the time to go deeper. You can reinforce skills. You can apply the learning in real world ways, which look, hopefully you're doing that throughout the year, but this is an object to do more of that. That might look like projects or writing or hands on work. A third option would be go ahead and take a break. We talked before, your break doesn't have to be in the summer. It doesn't have to be over the winter holidays. If you've finished and you want to take a little break and then pick up with the rest of the next level of school in May or June when the weather gets hot or the weather gets rainy or whatever it is, that's totally fine. You do not have to fill time just because school would. You
Mhm.
get to set the calendar and the schedule that works for you as a homeschooler. A fourth option would be to mix it up. You can try something new. Maybe you take the time to do some unit studies. I'm just going to say, I hear Homeschool Moms Unfiltered has some pretty amazing ones.
I've
Hint,
heard that
hint.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're interested, details in the show notes. Just putting that out there. You can do interest based learning if there's something your kiddo has been kind of toying around with, or maybe there's something that they were dabbling in and they enjoyed whatever free class or community class you signed them up for. And now you want to dive a little deeper and see if it is going to stick. This is the time to do that. You could do life skills. Again, this is something that you should be infusing throughout the year, but perhaps there's a larger skill that you want to focus on specifically now. I know in our home, we have that happening. I talked about this. We are going to do some very specific health and nutrition workbooks and reading comprehension things and stuff like that. And we're also going to do one that's specifically money management and stock market. We've been talking about it, looking at it this whole school year specifically. We've had lots of conversations around that. And so now we're really going to dive in and read some books that are specifically about that because we're not reading as much with our regular curriculum. We are done with most of that. And this is a good time to add in some more books without it being overwhelming. And then we can practice and do some stuff like that. It's a fun way to just kind of slide into summer and what we're going to do next. Whatever works, go for it. Flexibility, freedom, like this is the name of the game.
Exactly. Yeah. So aside from flexibility, there's a few things we would love for you to take away from this episode, but flexibility is important. The first is learning is not linear. It isn't in the school system either, even though their whole system is structured around linear progression.
Yeah.
Why do you think the school system is propped up on such a weebly foundation? It's not built on a strong foundation. It's not built in alignment with the way kids develop and learn. So it's okay if you're doing something different. We hope you're doing something different. If you pulled your kid out to take on all this extra work and spend extra money and all of that kind of stuff to homeschool your kid just to do the same thing that isn't working elsewhere, come to us for a coaching session. We've got you. Okay. We can help. So the core message of this episode, kids don't need to learn in neat yearly chunks. Maybe your kiddo prefers that. Okay, great. But that is by no means a requirement. And as the unschooler among us, I would also be like, does your kid prefer that because it's what they've known their whole life and that's conditioned, right? And so that might be some deschooling opportunity right there. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. And then expand, just grow. That's the focus, is moving forward, forward progression, growth, development. It can be uneven. It can be bursty. It can be interest driven. It can look so many different ways. It does not need to look the way that your education looked or what your kids have experienced thus far. If they've already been in school, it can look like something very different. And dare we say, better? Dare I say that? Yeah, you can do better. You can. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude, but you can. You can.
All right. So take those things away and keep in mind that these conversations are going to come up no matter what situation you're in, no matter where you live, no matter who you surround yourself with. At some point, someone is going to ask, "What grade are you in?" or something like that. And you can, and we would argue you probably should talk about these things in light, natural, organic ways with your kiddo, right? Talk about it so they don't panic when that question gets asked. And you don't feel the need to do damage control. And it's just going to make it smoother for everyone. Just make it a part of your general everyday conversation. It's okay to let our kids know that the question is built for a system that doesn't apply to them or you anymore. And you have some choices in how you respond to it going forward.
Hmm. Choices are always a good thing. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got our end of episode mantra for you to wrap us up for the day, which is grade levels organize schools, not learning. And your homeschool doesn't have to pretend otherwise.
Yep.
Yeah. Totally different system. You're not doing that thing. So step away from it. You're good. You can do your own thing.
Yeah.
All right, friends. Have an awesome rest of your day and happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.